For thousands of years, a mysterious land stretched alongside the winding Nile, a land that gave birth to one of the greatest stories ever told. Imagine a place where ancient rivers whispered secrets, where pyramids stood like stone giants guarding timeless tales, and where kings and queens ruled with divine power. This is Egypt, a cradle of civilization, a magical world both distant and astonishingly connected to the rhythms of nature. Welcome to a journey not just through dusty histories, but through the heartbeat of an ancient world. As the sun rises over the sprawling deserts and the life-giving Nile glistens in its morning glow, we step softly into a story that shaped humanity itself. This is a tale of human ingenuity, resilience, and mystery, a story so vast and rich, it can lull the mind into wonder and perhaps gently into sleep. From the earliest days, when small tribes settled beside fertile banks, struggling to tame the flow of water and earth, to the soaring achievements of pyramid builders and explorers, Egypt's history unfolds like an endless melody. Each chapter weaves new wonders: powerful pharaohs, timeless gods, astonishing art, and rituals designed to transcend mortality. Join me as we unravel this magnificent tapestry, piece by piece, in a voice as calm as the Nile's gentle current. Together, we'll move like the daily flood, steady, hopeful, and inevitable. So find a comfortable seat, a mysterious land stretched and alongside let your mind the winding wander Nile, through the sands of a land that gave birth to one of the greatest stories ever told. It's an invitation to dream Imagine with a place where ancient rivers discover the gift that Egypt has been to the world stood for like millennia. Stone giants guarding timeless tales. Let us begin. And where kings and long queens before towering pyramids power and grand temples, this is Egypt, captured the imaginations of the civilization. The story of Egypt world was quietly distant and along the banks of the Nile connected to the rhythms of nature. The Nile, the longest river in the world, not just through dusty histories, but with steady force through the desert, ancient world, creating a fertile ribbon of life over the sprawling deserts only and the life-giving Nile glistens in its morning glow. The river's annual flood was more than just a story that shaped humanity. It was a miracle woven into the very fabric of life. This is a tale of human ingenuity. Each year, the waters rose and mystery, flooding the plains, a story so vast and rich, dark soil. It can lull the mind into wonder, thick with nutrients, and perhaps turn the surrounding land into a patchwork of lush fields. From the earliest days, grain, when small tribes settled beside fertile banks, for the early peoples struggling to tame the flow of water, the Nile was a divine blessing. To the soaring achievements of pyramid their bodies and fueled their dreams. Egypt's history small communities began to spring up along this river, each chapter that would one day be called powerful pharaohs, Egypt, timeless gods. These people were among the first farmers and rituals designed and to transcend mortality. A people adapting, join me as we unravel and inventing ways to thrive in their environment. Piece by piece, over thousands of years, calm as the Nile's they built simple homes. Together, tools will from move stone like the daily flood, and formed farms that rotated with the flood inevitable. Life was deeply intertwined with nature's rhythms. The rising and falling of the Nile was measured, celebrated, and feared, a cycle of life and death that shaped everything from their farming schedules to their spiritual beliefs. It was within these humble beginnings that the seeds of ancient civilization were planted. A complex society took root, grounded in cooperation, shared beliefs, and an emerging sense of order. As communities grew, so too did their need for structure, leadership, and record-keeping. This was a time before kings, before monumental architecture, before written language as we know it. But even then, the foundations of Egyptian culture were forming. A deep respect for nature, a fascination with the afterlife, and an unbreakable bond with the land and the river. Around 3000 BCE, these many small settlements began to unite into two powerful kingdoms, Upper Egypt to the south and Lower Egypt to the north. Each kingdom had its own culture and leadership style, but both honored the Nile and relied on its life-giving floods. Their unification marked the beginning of Egypt's historical era, under the leadership of a ruler whose legacy would echo for millennia, King Narmer, also called Menes. Narmer's unification of the two lands, symbolized by the double crown worn by Egyptian pharaohs, was more than a political act. It represented the blending of traditions, the forging of a new identity, and the dawn of a civilization that would leave an indelible mark on the world. With unity came the need for record-keeping and communication. The Egyptians inked their world onto the walls of tombs and temples through the invention of hieroglyphics, an intricate system of symbols and pictures that captured stories, prayers, and decrees. These early writings are among the oldest in human history and provide us a window into their incredible world. As Egypt stepped into this new era, society became more organized and complex. The pharaoh was no ordinary king. They were divine rulers, thought to be gods on earth, bridging heaven and humanity. Their word was law, their favor essential for the continued prosperity of the land. Religious beliefs also blossomed. The Egyptians worshipped a pantheon of gods representing elements of nature: the sun god Ra, the river god Hapi, the goddess Isis, and many others. These gods were woven into the daily life and governing laws, their myths telling stories of creation, order, and renewal. Each pharaoh was also a guardian of Ma'at, the sacred concept of truth, balance, and cosmic order. The balance between chaos and order was fragile but crucial, and it was the pharaoh's duty to maintain it through wise rulership and grand monuments honoring the gods. One of the most breathtaking legacies of this era is the rise of pyramid building, monuments so grand they defy simple description. The earliest, like the step pyramid of Djoser, were revolutionary in architecture, a shift from simple mastabas to towering stone structures symbolizing divine power and eternal life. Builders used millions of limestone blocks, organizing labor on an unprecedented scale. These pyramids were tombs not just for the king's body, but for their soul's journey beyond death. Surrounding temples and tombs were decorated with sacred texts and vivid art, guiding the pharaoh's spirit to the afterlife. But Egypt was not just about mighty kings and grand structures. Daily life was rich and varied. Farmers worked the land, fishermen cast nets into the Nile, artisans crafted jewelry and pottery, and musicians filled the air with songs that echoed through the streets and temples. Life in ancient Egypt was intricate, a blend of practicality and spirituality. Marketplaces bustled with trade, festivals marked the agricultural and religious calendar, and stories were passed down through generations by word and writing. Yet throughout history, Egypt was no stranger to challenges. Political power sometimes diminished, regional rulers gained autonomy, and invaders from the outside world tested the strength of the kingdoms. These moments of crisis became transitions, bringing new ideas, new rulers, and new art forms. From the Old Kingdom's pyramid builders to the rich culture of the Middle Kingdom and the imperial ambitions of the New Kingdom, Egypt's history reads like an epic novel. Each era added layers to the civilization's identity, its architecture, religion, governance, and art evolving in an ongoing dialogue with time. And even beyond the pharaohs, the stories of everyday people, the farmers, the craftsmen, the priests and priestesses, bring this ancient world closer to us, reminding us that history is never just about kings, but about all who live, dream, and shape their world. As we continue this journey, the sands of time will reveal secrets of dynasties and battles, wisdom left in scrolls and statues, and the eternal heartbeat of Egypt, still pulsing beneath the desert sun. The story of Egypt's ancient glory unfolds along a timeline, stretching back thousands of years, like ripples flowing endlessly down the Nile. To truly appreciate this story, let's take a gentle journey through the ages, tracing the footsteps of those who lived, dreamed, and built a civilization that still captivates our imagination. Around 7000 BCE, people began settling along the fertile banks of the Nile Valley. It was here that nature and humanity first intertwined closely. These early inhabitants were hunter-gatherers, making use of the bountiful resources, fish from the Nile, wild plants, and game, and slowly learning to tame the land. By around 6000 BCE, organized farming took root, marking a pivotal moment in human history. Instead of moving constantly in search of food, communities began to cultivate crops like wheat, barley, flax, and lentils. They built simple reed homes and pottery, and some of the earliest cemeteries emerged, showing a budding respect for life beyond death. Fast forward to around 3100 BCE, and we meet one of the most legendary figures in Egyptian history, King Narmer, sometimes also called Menes. Narmer achieved something extraordinary. He united Upper Egypt, the southern part of the kingdom, and Lower Egypt, the delta region to the north, into a single, powerful state. This political union is often called the birth of dynastic Egypt and marks the beginning of recorded Egyptian history. Narmer's unification was symbolized by the Shent, the double crown representing the dual sovereignty over both lands. His rule set the stage for a string of great pharaohs, each building upon the legacy of their predecessors. Soon after, writing emerged in the form of hieroglyphics, an elegant and complex system of symbols that recorded everything from royal decrees to religious texts. This early writing marked the dawn of a new era, where history could be told with words, not just stories passed down by voice. As the dynasties followed one another, Egypt entered the Old Kingdom period, sometimes called the Age of the Pyramids, lasting from roughly 2686 to 2181 BCE. During this time, astonishing feats of engineering were achieved. The Step Pyramid of Djoser, designed by the brilliant architect Imhotep around 2670 BCE, was one of the earliest monumental structures made of stone and represented a giant leap in architectural innovation. Following that, the famous Giza pyramids were built, including the Great Pyramid of Khufu, the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. These pyramids were far more than tombs. They were cosmic gateways, built to secure the pharaoh's journey into eternity. Imagine the human effort involved. Thousands of skilled laborers and craftsmen working together with a shared vision, following precise, astronomical alignments that still mystify us today. Though the Old Kingdom was a time of prosperity and strong central power, it eventually gave way to a period known as the First Intermediate Period, around 2181-2055 BCE, when political power weakened and regional governors gained more control. This was not necessarily a dark age, but rather a time of change and adaptation within Egyptian society. New leadership emerged once again in the Middle Kingdom, circa 2055-1650 BCE. This era was marked by renewed stability and artistic flourishing. Pharaohs like Amenemhat III expanded irrigation projects, improving agriculture and trade, while literature and art blossomed with new sophistication. Yet, the Middle Kingdom wasn't without its challenges. Around 1650 BCE, the Hyksos people, a group of Asiatic origin, invaded and ruled parts of Egypt during the Second Intermediate Period. They introduced new technologies, including horse-drawn chariots and composite bows, forever changing Egyptian warfare. Finally, Egyptian rulers from Thebes rose up to expel the Hyksos, starting the New Kingdom, circa 1550-1069 BCE, the golden age of Egyptian power. During this time, Egypt extended its borders through military campaigns, reaching as far as Syria and Nubia. Great pharaohs like Hatshepsut, the first well-documented female ruler, Thutmose III, and Ramses II, the mighty warrior known for the Battle of Kadesh and lasting monuments, left their marks in stone and story. It was also during the New Kingdom that religious practices evolved in fascinating ways. Pharaoh Akhenaten attempted dramatic religious reforms, promoting the worship of a single sun disk god, Aten, in one of the earliest known monotheistic movements. Though his reign was short-lived, his experimentation shows the dynamic spiritual landscape of ancient Egypt. The empire eventually declined, entering the Third Intermediate Period and beyond, with foreign invasions and shifting powers leading to a rich tapestry of influences, from Nubian Kushites to Persians, Greeks under Alexander the Great, Romans, Byzantines, and Arabs. Throughout these millennia, ancient Egypt remained a land of deep spirituality, artistic achievement, and innovation. The civilization left behind a treasure trove of temples, tombs, artifacts, and writings, echoes of a time when humanity first dared to build monuments to eternity and imagine a life beyond the mortal world. As our journey continues, we'll explore the stories behind these incredible accomplishments and the lives of those who lived them, peasants, priests, artisans, warriors, and royalty alike, guiding you gently through the endless sands of Egyptian time. As our journey through the endless sands of Egypt's past deepens, it is helpful to gently trace the great arcs of time, the broad strokes of history that shaped this remarkable civilization. Imagine these periods as chapters in a vast book, each with its own stories, triumphs, and mysteries. Long before the pyramids reached skyward and pharaohs asserted their divine rule, the land was shaped by the earliest human footsteps. The first chapter begins around 8000 BCE in the Epipaleolithic period, when semi-nomadic groups began to inhabit the Nile Valley. These early communities lived close to the river, fishing its waters and gathering wild plants. Gradually, the Paleolithic gave way to the Neolithic, around 6000 BCE, when settled farming emerged. In this Fayum Neolithic period, people learned to cultivate the land, domesticate animals, and build reed houses. This slow, steady transformation laid the foundations for the complex societies to come. Between about 4000 and 3000 BCE, the pre-dynastic period unfolded. During this time, Egypt was divided into two cultural regions: Upper Egypt in the south, stretching from the Nile's first cataract to just south of modern Cairo, and Lower Egypt to the north, encompassing the Nile Delta. Each region developed its own customs, art styles, and political structures. It was in this period that symbolic systems began to emerge, including early forms of writing and sophisticated pottery designs. Rituals surrounding death and the afterlife became more elaborate, hinting at the profound spiritual beliefs that would define Egyptian religion. Then came a monumental turning point, around 3100 BCE, the dawn of the early dynastic period. This is when Upper and Lower Egypt were united under a single ruler, traditionally known as King Narmer or Menes. The first dynasties arose, and Memphis became the political and cultural heart of this newfound kingdom. With unification, a powerful centralized state was forged. The pharaoh, living divine representative of the gods on earth, wielded absolute power. Writing systems, hieroglyphics in particular, flourished, serving as tools for administration, history, and sacred texts. The subsequent Old Kingdom period, lasting roughly from 2686 to 2181 BCE, is often called the Age of the Pyramids, or the Age of the Pyramid Builders. This was when the iconic step pyramid at Saqqara soared for King Djoser, and the majestic pyramids of Giza were constructed by the Fourth Dynasty rulers, Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. These engineering marvels were expressions of spiritual beliefs and political might, symbols of eternal life and cosmic order. However, the Old Kingdom's strength waned, and by around 2181 BCE, Egypt entered the First Intermediate Period, a time of political fragmentation and regional power struggles. While sometimes called an era of decline, it was also a time of cultural evolution and social transformation. Stability returned with the Middle Kingdom period, circa 2055 to 1650 BCE, centered in Thebes. Pharaohs of the 11th and 12th dynasties, like Amenemhat I and Senusret III, reinvigorated the state, sponsored building projects, and strengthened the economy through trade and agriculture. Yet Egypt faced new challenges with the onset of the Second Intermediate Period around 1650 BCE. During this time, foreign powers known as the Hyksos invaded and established control in the northern part of Egypt, introducing new technologies and military tactics, including chariots and the composite bow. The New Kingdom, circa 1550 to 1069 BCE, then emerged as a dazzling era of imperial power and cultural splendor. Pharaohs such as Hatshepsut, the renowned female ruler, Thutmose III, the warrior king, and Ramses II, the prolific builder and diplomat, expanded Egypt's borders and influence. Religion flourished alongside the arts. It was during this time that the great temples of Karnak and Luxor reached their heights, and funerary practices reached new levels of complexity and beauty. The reign of Akhenaten and his radical religious reforms, promoting the worship of one god, Aten, added a dramatic chapter to Egypt's spiritual story. Following the New Kingdom, Egypt moved into the Third Intermediate Period, a phase characterized by decentralization and foreign influence, lasting from approximately 1069 to 664 BCE. Nubian, Libyan, and Assyrian rulers will leave their marks during this time, reshaping the political landscape. The late period, from 664 to 332 BCE, witnessed native Egyptian rule reasserting itself, but also the growing threats from powerful neighbors such as the Persians. Finally, the arrival of Alexander the Great in 332 BCE initiated the Hellenistic era, with the Ptolemaic dynasty blending Greek and Egyptian cultures, culminating in the reign of Cleopatra VII. Throughout these extensive epochs, Egypt's civilization evolved, yet retained its unique character, a deep connection to the Nile, a vision of the afterlife, and a creative spirit that produced remarkable art, architecture, and knowledge. As the Nile continues its eternal course even today, so too does the story of Egypt flow through the lives of those who uncover its secrets and celebrate its wonders. To truly appreciate the vast tapestry of Egypt's history, it helps to walk gently through its great periods, the chapters that define this remarkable civilization. Our story begins long before the pharaohs took their thrones, in what scholars call the Epipaleolithic period, more than 10,000 years ago. Small groups of people started to settle along the fertile banks of the Nile River. These early residents hunted, gathered, and fished, discovering the rhythms of the land and water. With the passage of time, around 6000 BCE, these nomadic bands began to settle more permanently. This was the Neolithic period, marked by farming, domesticated animals, and the construction of reed homes. This gradual shift from wanderers to settled communities laid the seedbed for social complexity. Between about 4300 and 3000 BCE, the pre-dynastic period blossomed. Two distinct cultures thrived: Upper Egypt to the south and Lower Egypt in the north. They developed their own customs, art, and political structures, setting the stage for unification. Early forms of writing and the first religious symbols emerged, intriguing glimpses into their beliefs about life, death, and the cosmos. Roughly around 3100 BCE, one of the most momentous events in the history of Egypt occurred: the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under a single ruler, traditionally King Narmer. This marked the beginning of the early dynastic period, where written history starts to take shape. The ancient city of Memphis rose as the capital, and the pharaoh became the divine ruler, bridging gods and men. The Old Kingdom followed from approximately 2686 to 2181 BCE. It is called the Age of the Pyramids, a time when the centralized power of the pharaohs reached its peak. The step pyramid of Djoser, crafted by the genius Imhotep, was an architectural revolution. Later, the majestic Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza, Khafra's Pyramid and the Sphinx formed an awe-inspiring necropolis, symbolizing the eternal power of the kings. Then came the first intermediate period, around 2181 to 2055 BCE, a time of political fragmentation and regional rule. The unity of the Old Kingdom faltered, but Egypt did not fall into total darkness. Instead, it was a phase of adaptation and cultural resilience. With the Middle Kingdom, 2055-1650 BCE, Egypt regained strength. New dynasties brought political stability, artistic innovation, and advances in irrigation and agriculture. The pharaohs, new patrons of arts and religion, revitalized the land. The second intermediate period saw a foreign group called the Hyksos take control of northern Egypt. Their arrival brought new tools and military technologies, including the chariot. Their rule was eventually toppled by native Egyptian rulers, sparking the New Kingdom era. From 1550 to 1069 BCE, the New Kingdom unfolded into a golden age. Egypt became an empire, expanding through military conquests and flourishing trade. Lavish temples, tombs, and treasures were created. Famous pharaohs like Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, and Ramses II left legacies carved in stone and legend. The religious landscape evolved dramatically, with Akhenaten's unique attempt at monotheistic worship standing out as a fascinating chapter. After the New Kingdom, Egypt's power slowly waned, but its cultural richness endured through the Third Intermediate and late periods. Foreign invaders, Libyans, Nubians, Persians, Greeks, and Romans, each left their imprint on Egypt's complex history. Yet, through conquest and change, the spirit of ancient Egypt endured, with its timeless art, enduring architecture, and deep spirituality, continuing to inspire wonder millennia later. Now, as we immerse ourselves further, let's gently walk through the sweeping periods of ancient Egypt's long history, a timeline stretching over 3 millennia, full of wonder, change, and resilient life caught between sun and sand. Starting with the pre-dynastic period, from around 4300 to 3100 BCE, life along the Nile slowly transformed. Small farming villages multiplied, and societies developed complex rituals, art, and early forms of government. This period was named after the Naqada culture, with divisions like Naqada Fetburs II and III marking evolving advancements in pottery, architecture, and spiritual beliefs. Then came the early dynastic period, roughly 3100 to 2686 BCE, a critical dawn of historic Egypt. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under King Narmer set the course for an identity that would merge thousands of years of shared culture, language, and governance into a powerful kingdom. The Old Kingdom followed from around 2686 to 2181 BCE, often called the Age of the Pyramids. This was a golden era of stability and creativity, with the rise of the Fourth Dynasty pharaohs, Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure, who built the pyramids that still inspire awe today. The architectural marvels of this period are testament to an Egyptian vision built on precision, faith, and the desire to touch eternity. Yet, as all great stories ebb and flow, the Old Kingdom gave way to the First Intermediate period, from about 2181 to 2055 BCE. Here, central power weakened, local leaders rose, and Egypt fragmented into competing factions. While often seen as a time of disorder, it also sparked cultural change and resilience, setting the stage for revival. The Middle Kingdom blossomed around 2055 BCE and lasted nearly 350 years. Pharaohs of the 11th and 12th dynasties restored unity, strengthened agriculture through canal building, and encouraged arts and literature. This period saw Egypt opening to the wider world, trade flourishing, and economic and creative prosperity growing. Next was the Second Intermediate Period, an era marked by foreign influence. The Hyksos, a group of Asiatic rulers with advanced weaponry and chariots, took control of northern Egypt, while native rulers held sway in the south. This complex duality would soon give way to a resurgence of native power. The New Kingdom, stretching from approximately 1550 to 1069 BCE, is the most celebrated chapter of Egyptian history for many. It was Egypt's imperial age. Pharaohs like Hatshepsut, famed for her flourishing trade expeditions and monumental tomb, Thutmose III, called the Napoleon of ancient Egypt for his military genius, and Ramses II, a builder and warrior whose statues and temples are among the most famous legacies, shaped a mighty kingdom. Religion and culture flourished here too. Luxor and Karnak temples grew ever more magnificent. Mummification art reached sublime levels. And in a fascinating twist, Pharaoh Akhenaten's monotheistic worship of the sun disk, Aten offered a glimpse of spiritual experimentation rarely seen in Egyptian history. After this glimmering apex, power fragmented again during the Third Intermediate Period, between roughly 1069 and 664 BCE. Dynasties overlapped, foreign rulers intervened, and regional leaders vied for control, but Egypt remained culturally vibrant. The late period lasted from 664 to 332 BCE, a time of attempts at restoration amid foreign threats. It ended as the age of Alexander the Great approached, when Greek rulers brought Egypt into a new Hellenistic chapter, the Ptolemaic dynasty, where Greek and Egyptian traditions intertwined until the Roman conquest. Throughout it all, Egypt's story is a delicate balance between persistence and transformation, its ancient stones standing as silent witnesses to the lives, innovations, gods, and dreams of a civilization that still captivates us. As the river Nile nourished the land, so too did the flow of time bring Egypt through a succession of dynasties and epochs, each carving a unique mark in the sands of history. The pre-dynastic period, lasting approximately from 4300 to 3100 BCE, was when Egypt's earliest cultures began to flourish. Known as the Naqada culture, this era saw the evolution of social structures, artistry, and ritual practices. Pottery became increasingly sophisticated, and early evidence of religious beliefs emerged in burial customs. Following this, the early dynastic period from about 3100 to 2686 BCE witnessed the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. The First and Second dynasties emerged, establishing the foundations of Egypt's centralized monarchy. The capital at Memphis became the political and cultural heart. The divine role of the pharaoh was solidified, and hieroglyphic writing flourished, enabling the recording of events, laws, and prayers. The Old Kingdom, from around 2686 to 2181 BCE, brought Egypt its pyramids and the pinnacle of pharaonic power. The Third through Sixth dynasties saw incredible feats of architecture, including the Step Pyramid of Djoser and the Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza. The pharaoh was considered a living god, and bureaucracy and administration expanded to coordinate vast building projects and maintain order. As the Old Kingdom waned, Egypt entered the First Intermediate Period, 2181-2025 BCE, a time of political instability and fragmentation. Power was divided among local rulers, and the central government weakened, yet cultural and artistic developments continued in various regions. The Middle Kingdom, 2025-1700 BCE, saw reunification under the 11th and 12th dynasties. This era revived centralized authority, stabilized the economy, and expanded monumental construction and literary achievements. Pharaohs like Senusret III commissioned projects to improve irrigation and manage Nile floods efficiently. The Second Intermediate Period, 1700-1550 BCE, was marked by foreign incursions, notably the Hyksos invasions, which introduced new technology and shifted power dynamics. Native Egyptian rulers retained control in the south until eventual military campaigns drove out the invaders. Then dawned the New Kingdom, 1550–1069 BCE, Egypt's imperial zenith. The 18th to 20th dynasties brought wealth, military expansion, and cultural renaissance. Legendary rulers such as Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, and Ramses II built temples, led armies, and fostered religious and artistic brilliance. The religious reform of Akhenaten, promoting Aten worship, was among the period's singular episodes. After the New Kingdom, Egypt transitioned into the Third Intermediate Period, 1069–664 BCE, experiencing political division and the influence of Libyan, Nubian, and Assyrian rulers. The late period, 664–332 BCE, witnessed efforts at resurgence amid Persian dominance and growing external threats. The arrival of Alexander the Great in 332 BCE introduced the Macedonian era, followed by the Hellenistic Ptolemaic dynasty, blending Egyptian and Greek cultures until the Roman conquest. Through millennia, Egypt's history ebbed and flowed like the Nile itself, full of cycles of unity, division, prosperity, and challenge. But its cultural and spiritual heart endured, continuing to whisper through time. It might seem natural to wonder why we begin at the very start, long before the towering pyramids and mighty pharaohs, when the story of Egypt truly captivates our imagination. But understanding where a civilization begins, its roots by the riverbanks of the Nile and its early stirrings, is the key to unlocking the beauty of everything that follows. The ebb and flow of Egyptian history is much like the Nile itself, steady, gradual, and full of life-giving purpose. To fully appreciate the grandeur and mysteries of its monuments, the majesty of its kings, and the depth of its culture, we have to first take a slow, gentle walk through the sands of time, tracing the earliest footsteps of those who shaped this ancient world. So let us continue our journey, moving smoothly along from those humble beginnings into the grand chapters that shaped Egypt's destiny. Around 4300 BCE, the pre-dynastic period welcomed the flourishing of early Egyptian cultures. This era, known for the Naqada culture, witnessed remarkable social and artistic developments. People began settling in larger communities, crafting beautifully decorated pottery, and establishing elaborate burial practices, hinting at spiritual concepts that would grow deeper with time. As the river carried the years forward to around 3100 BCE, the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt marked the beginning of the early dynastic period. It was a new dawn, where kingship was established, the iconic double crown symbolized unity, and hieroglyphic writing gave voice to Egypt's stories, commands, and prayers. Memphis blossomed as the political and religious center, setting the tone for ages to come. The Old Kingdom, spanning approximately 2686 to 2181 BCE, is often called Egypt's Age of the Pyramids. This era centered on the 4th to 6th dynasties, whose pharaohs constructed monumental pyramids and temples, reflecting their divine roles and unyielding vision of eternity. The Step Pyramid of Djoser, a masterpiece by architect Imhotep, and Khufu's Great Pyramid at Giza, stand as timeless testaments to this golden age of architectural innovation and religious fervor. Following this period of unity and achievement, Egypt moved into the First Intermediate Period, 2181–2025 BCE. Political power fragmented as the central authority waned, allowing for regional governors to assert dominance. Despite seeming instability, culture and the arts continued to thrive, particularly in the south around Thebes, foreshadowing the next era of renewal. The Middle Kingdom, from 2025 to 1700 BCE, saw the reunification of Egypt under the 11th and 12th dynasties. Pharaohs like Senusret III enacted significant reforms, and large-scale irrigation works to tame the Nile floods, ensuring bountiful harvests. Literature flourished, and Egypt's identity as a sophisticated, prosperous state was reaffirmed. Around 1700 BCE, Egypt faced new challenges in the form of the Second Intermediate Period. The Hyksos, a powerful foreign group wielding advanced weapons and chariots, seized control over parts of the land, particularly in the north. Native rulers in the south resisted fiercely, eventually driving out the Hyksos and ushering in Egypt's greatest imperial era. The New Kingdom, from about 1550 to 1069 BCE, saw Egypt at the height of its power and glory. Pharaohs such as Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, and Ramses II expanded their territories through military campaigns and forged diplomatic ties far beyond the Nile Valley. This was an era of grand temples, refined arts, and profound religious developments, including the revolutionary monotheistic worship attempted by Akhenaten. Egypt's decline was gradual but inevitable. The Third Intermediate Period, 1069–664 BCE, was marked by political fragmentation and the influence of Libyan, Nubian, and Assyrian rulers. The Late Period, 664–332 BCE, brought intermittent revival, but constant pressure from foreign empires, including Persia's conquests. Finally, the coming of Alexander the Great in 332 BCE introduced the Greek Macedonian era, the Ptolemaic dynasty, and centuries of Greco-Roman cultural blending, culminating in the famous reign of Cleopatra VII and the Roman annexation. Through these cycles of unity and division, innovation and invasion, Egypt's essence endured. Its spirituality, artistry, and connection to the rhythms of the Nile continue to echo, inviting us to listen closely to the whispers of history. Let us now gently explore the major dynasties and their contributions, unfolding like chapters in Egypt's magnificent story. The early dynastic period, spanning roughly from 3100 to 2686 BCE, includes Egypt's first and second dynasties. This was a time of forging identity and building government. The capital city Memphis sprang forth, becoming the political and spiritual center. The pharaoh's divine status took root, and the earliest hieroglyphs began to record the deeds of kings and gods. Following this, the Old Kingdom, from about 2686 to 2181 BCE, brought Egypt into its golden architectural age. Dynasties 3 through 6 left behind some of the world's most iconic monuments: the Step Pyramid of Djoser, designed by the visionary Imhotep, and most famously, the Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza. The pharaoh was considered a god-king, and the kingdom was run with sophisticated administration to coordinate monumental projects. However, change is constant, and the power of the Old Kingdom eventually waned. The First Intermediate Period, lasting from 2181 to 2025 BCE, brought decentralization. The nation was divided, with regional princes vying for control. While political unity faltered, cultural and artistic achievements continued, especially in southern Egypt. With renewed strength, the Middle Kingdom, 2025–1700 BCE, reunified Egypt under the 11th and 12th dynasties. Pharaohs like Senusret III undertook massive irrigation projects, turning desert into arable land, thereby stabilizing the economy and enriching society. This era also saw an explosion of literature, art, and architecture. Subsequently, the Second Intermediate Period, 1700–1550 BCE, brought foreign intrusion. The Hyksos, wielding advanced weaponry and chariots, took northern Egypt. Yet the native Egyptian rulers in the south resisted, eventually expelling the Hyksos and ushering in Egypt's New Kingdom. The New Kingdom, 1550–1069 BCE, marks Egypt's imperial zenith. 18th to 20th dynasties under rulers like Hatshepsut, Thutmose III, and Ramses II expanded Egypt's influence dramatically. Temples at Karnak and Luxor reach their zenith. Monumental tombs narrate spiritual beliefs, and cultural life flourished. The religious revolution under Akhenaten, centered on the sun disk Aten, remains a captivating episode in Egyptian spirituality. The Third Intermediate Period, 1069–664 BCE, followed, characterized by political division and foreign rule from Libyans, Nubians, and Assyrians. Finally, the Late Period, 664–332 BCE, was a time of restorations amid invasions, ending with Alexander the Great's conquest, and the start of the Macedonian and Ptolemaic eras, where Greek and Egyptian cultures blended. Through dynasties and epochs, chaos and unity, Egypt's spirit endures, its legacy eternal as the Nile itself. Now, let's delve gently into the rich lineage of Egypt's dynasties, the great families and rulers who shaped the nation's destiny across millennia. The journey begins with the First Dynasty, around 3100 BCE, following the unification under King Narmer. This era laid the firm foundation for pharaonic rule. Kings like Aha, Jer, and Den established governmental structures and strengthened Egypt's unity. Following closely was the Second Dynasty, from approximately 2890 to 2686 BCE, a time marked by both consolidation and some unrest. Notable rulers such as Peribsen and Kasekemwi contributed to stabilizing the kingdom. This period hints at early experimentation with religious ideas and political authority. The Third Dynasty commenced around 2686 BCE, signaling the start of the Old Kingdom. This dynasty's most famous king, Djoser, ignited a revolution in architecture, commissioning the Step Pyramid at Saqqara, designed by the master architect Imhotep. This pyramid, the world's first large-scale stone monument, symbolized the pharaoh's divine power and the civilization's engineering brilliance. Then came the Fourth Dynasty, 2613–2494 BCE, often heralded as Egypt's golden age of pyramid construction. Pharaohs like Sneferu, Khufu, Khafra, and Menkaure shaped an era of peace and prosperity, constructing the monumental pyramids on the Giza Plateau that remain awe-inspiring to this day. The Fifth Dynasty, 2494–2345 BCE, saw a shift towards solar worship, with kings such as Userkaf and Sahur building impressive sun temples, while continuing pyramid construction. This period reflected both religious innovation and administrative development. Next was the Sixth Dynasty, 2345–181 BCE, which carried on the traditions of pyramid building and centralized rule. But towards the dynasty's end, signs of decline appeared. Regional governors, or nomarchs, gained power, and internal strife hinted at the coming instability. This instability unfolded into the First Intermediate Period, 2181–2055 BCE, where Egypt fractured into smaller competing polities, often divided between Heracleopolis in the north and Thebes in the south. Despite political chaos, cultural and religious life persisted, setting the stage for reunification. The 11th Dynasty, 2134–1991 BCE, saw Mentuhotep II reunite Egypt, restoring stability and central power, inaugurating the Middle Kingdom. The 12th Dynasty, 1991–1802 BCE, is often called Egypt's classical age, marked by effective governance under pharaohs like Amenemhat III and Senusret III. During this time, grand building projects, agricultural innovations, and literary achievements flourished. Subsequent dynasties during the Second Intermediate Period, c. 1782–1570 BCE, witnessed foreign influence and upheaval, especially the rule of the Hyksos. The New Kingdom, 1570–1069 BCE, encompassed the 18th through 20th dynasties. It was Egypt's imperial zenith, with luminary rulers Hatshepsut, Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, and Ramses II, leaving an indelible mark through conquest, art, and monumental architecture. After this pinnacle, Egypt passed into the Third Intermediate Period, 1069-664 BCE, marked by fragmentation and external pressures. The late period, 664-332 BCE, saw intermittent resurgence before the arrival of Alexander the Great, who ushered in Greek influence and the Ptolemaic dynasty. These dynasties and periods are the chapters of Egypt's unfolding story, layers of human endeavor caught between the desert sands and the ever-flowing Nile. Let us now immerse ourselves in the Old Kingdom, a golden age of Egyptian civilization that lasted from approximately 2686 to 2181 BCE. This period, encompassing the 3rd to 6th dynasties, is best known for its monumental architecture, especially the world-famous pyramids. The 3rd dynasty marked the dawn of grand stone construction. The visionary pharaoh Djoser commissioned the step pyramid at Saqqara, designed by the unparalleled architect Imhotep. This structure was the world's first large-scale cut stone building, a revolutionary step that paved the way for Egypt's most iconic monuments. The step pyramid was not just a tomb, but a cosmic symbol connecting the earthly realm to the heavens. During the 4th dynasty, Egypt reached an architectural zenith. Pharaoh Sneferu experimented with pyramid designs and built the bent pyramid and red pyramid at Dashur, perfecting the geometry needed for monumental construction. His son, Khufu, known to history as Cheops, commissioned the Great Pyramid of Giza, the largest pyramid ever constructed, rising majestically as a testament to divine kingship and eternal life. Khufu's successors, including Khafre and Menkaure, continued this legacy. Khafre built the 2nd pyramid at Giza and is often associated with the enigmatic Great Sphinx, that guardian lion with a human face, symbolizing royal power and protection. Menkaure, Khafre's son, completed the 3rd pyramid complex, slightly smaller but no less significant in architectural artistry. The 5th dynasty, spanning roughly 2494 to 2345 BCE, introduced a shift in religious practice. Pharaohs built sun temples dedicated to Ra, the sun god, reflecting the growing importance of solar worship. Kings such as Userkaf and Sahure commissioned grand structures emphasizing this divine relationship, while pyramid building continued on a smaller scale. The 6th dynasty, 2345-2181 BCE, preserved many Old Kingdom traditions, but also saw increasing political decentralization. Pharaohs ruled over a more complex and sometimes fractious kingdom, as local nomarchs gained power. Despite these challenges, the era witnessed remarkable developments in art, literature, and administration, culminating in the last strong ruler Pepi II, who reigned possibly for nearly a century. Yet, with Pepi II's death, the Old Kingdom declined, plagued by weak successors and rising regional conflicts. This led to the First Intermediate Period, where central authority collapsed and Egypt experienced political fragmentation. Now, let us softly transition to the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, often called the Classical Age of this ancient civilization. Stretching approximately from 2055 to 1650 BCE, the Middle Kingdom marks a remarkable chapter of reunification, revival, and prosperity following the political fragmentation of the First Intermediate Period. The Middle Kingdom begins its story with Mentuhotep II, a pharaoh of the 11th dynasty who ascended to power in Thebes around 2055 BCE. His rule stands as a beacon of unity and restoration. After decades of civil strife during the First Intermediate Period, Mentuhotep II undertook the monumental task of reunifying Upper and Lower Egypt. During his reign, Mentuhotep II subdued rival factions, conquered rebellious nomes, and re-established a centralized government. His military campaigns extended Egyptian influence south into Nubia and east into the Sinai, reasserting control over strategic trade routes and valuable resources. Politically and spiritually, Mentuhotep II portrayed himself as a god king, wearing the crowns symbolizing rule over both lands and commissioning elaborate mortuary complexes. His impressive temple at Deir el-Bahari was groundbreaking in architectural innovation, inspiring later constructions such as Hatshepsut's temple centuries after. The 11th dynasty included other notable rulers such as Mentuhotep III and Afori, who continued to consolidate the gains of their predecessor, ensuring a period of stability and cultural blossoming. The transition into the 12th dynasty, around 1991 BCE, initiated by Amenemhat III, brought a new capital from Thebes to Ichtawi near modern-day Lisht in Lower Egypt, a symbolic and strategic shift aimed at controlling the more fertile northern delta and protecting Egypt against foreign incursions. Amenemhat I established a robust administrative apparatus staffed with loyal officials and military leaders. Under his guidance, Egypt's boundaries were secured, and irrigation projects enhanced agriculture, which was the kingdom's economic backbone. Amenemhat I initiated co-regency by appointing his son, Senusret IV, also known as Sesostris, as co-ruler to ensure a smooth transition of power, a practice that became a tradition in later Middle Kingdom reigns. Senusret I was a dynamic and energetic pharaoh who expanded Egypt's trading networks and embarked on ambitious construction projects. Notably, he began the enlargement and decoration of the Temple of Amun at Karnak, which would become one of the most significant religious sites in Egypt. The reign of Senusret III, often hailed as the greatest warrior king of the Middle Kingdom, brought military prowess to the forefront. He organized military expeditions to Nubia, built formidable fortresses in the south, and streamlined the administration into 4 regions to enhance governance. Senusret III's reign was also marked by an increased focus on social welfare. He improved irrigation systems and trade, building canals to channel Nile floodwaters more efficiently and establish agricultural surpluses. Following him, Amenemhat III furthered these policies, constructing impressive monuments such as the Labyrinth and the Temple Complex at Hawara, renowned for its architectural complexity. Artistic achievements during the Middle Kingdom demonstrated both continuity and innovation. Statues of rulers from this period display a remarkable realism, depicting pharaohs as powerful, yet aging men with furrowed brows, a departure from earlier idealized forms. Literature flourished as well. The Middle Kingdom produced some of Egypt's greatest literary works, including wisdom texts, tales, and hymns that reflected complex philosophies on morality, governance, and the afterlife. Religion continued to be central in Egyptian life. The cult of Osiris, god of the afterlife and resurrection, rose in prominence. Beliefs about the soul's journey after death deepened, influencing funerary practices and tomb inscriptions. Despite the Middle Kingdom's sustained prosperity and cultural richness, toward its end, the kingdom faced challenges. Rising power among nomarchs and increasing pressure from Western desert peoples and Eastern invaders weakened central control. The decline of the Middle Kingdom gave way to the Second Intermediate Period, a turbulent time marked by fragmented rule and foreign domination, especially by the Hyksos people in the north. As the golden sands of time continued to shift, Egypt entered a fascinating and complex chapter known as the Second Intermediate Period. Spanning roughly from 1782 to 1550 BCE, this era was marked by political fragmentation, cultural diversity, and foreign influence. It is a period that, while sometimes characterized as chaotic, is better understood as a time of transition, resilience, and adaptation. A moment when Egypt's incredible spirit endured despite change. The backdrop to this period was the decline of the mighty Middle Kingdom, whose 12th dynasty had boasted powerful pharaohs like Senusret III and Amenemhat III. But as central authority weakened, regional rulers, known as nomarchs, began to assert more control over their territories, fracturing Egypt's political unity. Amid this decentralization, several dynasties ruled simultaneously across the land. The 13th and 14th dynasties governed different parts of Egypt, and while their reigns overlapped, their power was limited compared to the earlier centralized Middle Kingdom pharaohs. However, the most significant players of this era were the Hyksos, a people of probable Levantine origin who migrated into the Nile Delta region. Around 1640 BCE, they established themselves as powerful rulers, founding what Egyptologists call the 15th dynasty. Their capital was at Avaris, a city strategically positioned in the northeastern delta. The Hyksos introduced several new cultural, technological, and military innovations to Egypt, most notably the horse-drawn chariot, composite bows, and improved bronze weaponry. These advancements quickly changed the nature of warfare and power dynamics, enabling the Hyksos to dominate northern Egypt and influence its economy and politics. Despite being foreign rulers, the Hyksos adopted many Egyptian practices to legitimize their reign. They even styled themselves as pharaohs, with titles like Sons of Ra, blending Egyptian religious symbolism with their own cultural heritage. This fusion illustrates the adaptability and complexity of the period. South of Hyksos-controlled territories, native Egyptian rulers maintained control in Thebes and Upper Egypt. The 16th and 17th dynasties revolved around these southern strongholds, with kings determined to reclaim their homeland from foreign rulers. Trade and cultural exchanges continued between Thebes and Avaris, even amid rivalry and conflict. The struggle between these competing forces defines much of the narrative of the Second Intermediate Period. Egypt was a land divided, yet its people preserved their rich culture, language, and religious traditions. One remarkable aspect of this era is how it challenges past assumptions. For a long time, historians cast the Second Intermediate Period as a dark age, a time of cultural decline and chaos. However, ongoing archaeological research reveals an enduring vitality. Literature was still produced, artistic endeavors continued, and religious rites flourished. We also learn about key figures such as Sekenenre Tao II and his son Kamose, rulers of the 17th dynasty who led military campaigns aimed at uniting Egypt by expelling the Hyksos. Their resistance set the stage for the eventual liberation and resurgence of Egyptian autonomy. The final chapter of this period unfolded under Ahmose I, who decisively defeated the Hyksos around 1550 BCE, marking the beginning of the New Kingdom, the age when Egypt rose once more to dominate the ancient world. The Second Intermediate Period thus emerges as a testament to endurance amid division, highlighting the complex interactions between native Egyptians and foreign powers, and bridging the gap between Egypt's Middle Kingdom splendor and its New Kingdom glory. Now let us enter the grand era of the New Kingdom, often called the Egyptian Empire, spanning approximately from 1550 to 1070 BCE, to many, the pinnacle of ancient Egyptian civilization. This period began after the dramatic expulsion of the Hyksos by Ahmose I, who reunited Egypt and restored its sovereignty, ushering in an age of unprecedented power, wealth, and cultural brilliance. Ahmose I, founder of the 18th dynasty, was a formidable military leader. Following his victory over the Hyksos, he pursued campaigns into southern Nubia and the Sinai Peninsula, securing Egypt's borders and access to precious resources like gold. This expansion was not merely territorial, but a strategic effort to create buffer zones that would protect Egypt from future invasions. Ahmose's reign marked the dawn of Egypt's first imperial aspirations. His successors continued to expand Egypt's influence far beyond the Nile Valley, establishing Egypt as a dominant power in the Near East and Eastern Mediterranean regions. One of the most remarkable rulers of the 18th dynasty was Hatshepsut, Egypt's longest reigning female pharaoh. Ascending the throne around 1479 BCE, Hatshepsut's reign was marked by peace, economic prosperity, and monumental building projects. She famously commissioned a magnificent mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, adorned with scenes depicting her divine birth and trade expeditions. Hatshepsut's trade mission to the fabled land of Punt brought lavish goods, myrrh, gold, and exotic animals, bolstering Egypt's wealth and diplomatic ties. Following Hatshepsut, the warrior pharaoh Thutmose III led relentless military campaigns that expanded Egypt's empire to its greatest geographic extent. Known as the Napoleon of Egypt, his conquests stretched from Nubia in the south to Syria and Palestine in the north, imposing Egyptian authority and securing tribute. Thutmose III also continued Egypt's grand architectural traditions by building temples and obelisks throughout the kingdom, celebrating both his victories and devotion to the gods. The son of Thutmose III, Amenhotep II, maintained his father's military legacy and continued to consolidate Egypt's borders. However, it was the reign of Amenhotep III that marked a pinnacle of artistic and diplomatic excellence. His rule, spanning roughly from 1390 to 1352 BCE, saw extraordinary temple construction, including the vast complex at Luxor and extensive additions to Karnak. Amenhotep III fostered peaceful diplomatic relations with neighboring powers, exchanging lavish gifts and securing Egypt's influence through marriage alliances. Then came one of the most intriguing and controversial figures in Egyptian history, Akhenaten, who ruled circa 1353 to 1336 BCE. Originally Amenhotep IV, he radically altered Egyptian religious life by elevating the sun disk Aten to supremacy, promoting a form of monotheism unprecedented in Egypt. Akhenaten moved the capital to a new city, Akhetaten, modern Amarna, away from traditional religious centers. His reign witnessed a remarkable artistic transformation, depicting the royal family with elongated limbs and expressive faces, a departure from conventional Egyptian art. After Akhenaten's death, traditional religious practices were restored under Tutankhamun, the boy king, who has become famous in our modern imagination due to the discovery of his nearly intact tomb in the Valley of the Kings. The 19th and 20th dynasties, known as the Ramesside period, followed, with pharaohs like Seti I and Ramses II, one of Egypt's greatest warrior kings, leading vast building programs and military campaigns. Ramses II, often called Ramses the Great, reigned for nearly 67 years and is credited with creating many enduring monuments, including the temples at Abu Simbel and the Ramesseum. His military exploits include the famous Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites, resulting in what is recorded as the first known peace treaty. Despite such grandeur, the new kingdom eventually faced internal strife, economic difficulties, and external pressures from groups such as the Sea Peoples and Libyans. The weakening of pharaonic authority, combined with growing power of the priesthood, particularly the priests of Amun in Thebes, led to a decline culminating in the Third Intermediate Period. Yet, the new kingdom's cultural achievements, military prowess, and architectural marvels continue to captivate and inspire, standing as testament to a civilization at its zenith. As we step deeper into the New Kingdom, it becomes clear why historians often regard this era as the zenith of ancient Egyptian civilization. Spanning roughly from 1550 to 1070 BCE, this magnificent period witnessed Egypt's transformation into a formidable empire, a cultural beacon whose influence stretched from the deserts of Nubia in the south to the mountains of the Levant in the north. The dawn of this era is marked decisively by Pharaoh Ahmose I, the hero who successfully expelled the Hyksos invaders from Egypt. His military campaign secured not only the reunification of Egypt, but also set forth the kingdom's first imperial ambitions. Fighting with strategic brilliance, Ahmose extended Egypt's borders southward into Nubia, a region rich in gold and other precious resources, and northward into the Sinai Peninsula, areas vital for Egypt's security and prosperity. Ahmose's reign forged the foundation of the 18th dynasty, which would give rise to some of the most renowned rulers in Egypt's long history. Among these luminaries was Hatshepsut, Egypt's longest reigning female pharaoh, who ascended the throne around 1479 BCE. She defied the male-dominated norms to rule with intelligence and grace, championing peace and prosperity. Her reign is immortalized through her grand mortuary temple carved into the cliffs of Deir el-Bahari, adorned with vivid reliefs illustrating her divine birth and remarkable trade expeditions to the distant and mysterious land of Punt. These expeditions brought back rare and valuable luxuries, myrrh, gold, ebony, and exotic animals, enriching Egypt's economy and strengthening diplomatic ties across the Red Sea. Following Hatshepsut, the fiery warrior pharaoh Thutmose III took the reins, earning a reputation as the Napoleon of Egypt for his military prowess. His campaigns expanded Egypt's empire to its greatest known geographic extent. He marched his armies from Nubia and deep into the Levant, asserting Egyptian dominance and securing tribute from conquered territories, while simultaneously encouraging monumental temple building and cultural advancement at home. The legacy of Thutmose III set the stage for his successor, Amenhotep II, who maintained the kingdom's military strength and administrative stability. Perhaps the most gloriously creative monarch of the new kingdom was Amenhotep III, reigning from approximately 1390 to 1352 BCE. His era was marked by unprecedented artistic and architectural sophistication. The vast temple complexes at Karnak and Luxor were expanded under his patronage, and his diplomatic marriages to foreign princesses reinforced Egypt's far-reaching alliances. Yet, amidst such grandeur arose one of Egypt's most controversial figures, Amenhotep IV, later known as Akhenaten. Around 1353 BCE, Akhenaten revolutionized Egyptian religion by promoting the worship of Aten, the sun disk, as the sole deity, effectively initiating Egypt's first known monotheistic faith. With a bold vision, he moved the capital to a freshly founded city, Akhetaten, modern-day Amarna, shaping a distinctly different artistic style that portrayed the royal family with striking naturalism and emotion. After Akhenaten's death, traditional religious practices were swiftly restored during the reign of Tutankhamun, the boy king made famous in modern times through the discovery of his nearly intact tomb. His reign, though short-lived, symbolizes the return to Egypt's ancient gods and cultural foundations. The new kingdom's final phase, often labeled the Ramesside period, spanned the 19th and 20th dynasties. This era was dominated by powerful rulers like Seti I and Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great, who commissioned vast building projects, including the magnificent temples of Abu Simbel and the Ramesseum, celebrating both their own might and devotion to the gods. Ramses II's military exploits, particularly the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittites, culminated in what is considered the world's first recorded peace treaty, underscoring Egypt's prominence in international diplomacy. Despite its splendor, the new kingdom eventually faced mounting internal challenges, economic difficulties, and external threats, such as the incursions of the Sea Peoples and Libyan tribes. The increasing power of the priesthood, especially the influential Amun priests in Thebes, eroded royal authority. These factors combined, ushering in the decline of the new kingdom and the emergence of the Third Intermediate Period. Yet, the New Kingdom's cultural achievements, the towering temples, exquisite art, enduring literature, and the stories of its mighty pharaohs continue to echo through the ages. They stand as testaments to a civilization at the height of its powers, whose legacy has fascinated and inspired humanity for millennia. As the curtain fell on the New Kingdom's final days, Egypt entered into a complex and often misunderstood chapter, known today as the Third Intermediate Period, spanning approximately from 1070 to 664 BCE. This era was characterized by political fragmentation, shared rule, and cultural transformation, a time when Egypt was no longer the centralized imperial power it once was, but remained vibrant and influential in new ways. The Third Intermediate Period begins with the death of Ramesses V around 1070 BCE. Following his reign, Egypt experienced a diffusion of authority among multiple power centers. The 21st dynasty, based in the city of Tanis in the northeastern Nile Delta, ruled northern Egypt, while in southern Egypt, powerful high priests of Amun held sway from Thebes. This division of power, instead of causing continuous warfare, often resulted in relative peace, as rulers negotiated uneasy balances. The era became one of shared governance, where pharaohs in the north and priest-kings in the south wielded influence over separate realms, but upheld a semblance of unity through religious and cultural continuity. The 22nd dynasty emerged from a family of Libyan origin that settled in Egypt and assimilated into its culture, ruling northern Egypt from about 945 to 712 BCE. These Libyan pharaohs embraced Egyptian traditions and presented themselves as legitimate successors to the throne, fostering stability in uncertain times. However, after the 22nd dynasty, Egypt's political landscape became ever more fragmented. The 23rd dynasty consisted of local rulers who often controlled parts of Upper Egypt, while other petty kings governed independently, including the 24th dynasty, ruling from Sais in the western Delta region. During this time, Egypt also increasingly lost control over Nubia to emerging native Kushite powers from the south. Around 750 BCE, the Nubian kingdom of Kush expanded northward, eventually establishing the 25th dynasty, often called the Nubian or Kushite dynasty. King Kashta led the initial invasion into Egypt, followed by notable rulers like Paye and Shabaka, who consolidated Nubian rule over Egypt. These Nubian pharaohs revived many traditions, including the restoration of temples and promotion of Egyptian religious practices, effectively bridging two great African civilizations. Amid the shifting powers, the Assyrian Empire exerted pressure on Egypt. In the 7th century BCE, Assyria launched invasions to control Egypt, but local rulers like Psamtik IV ultimately asserted independence, founding the 26th dynasty and initiating the late period of Egyptian history. Throughout the Third Intermediate Period, Egypt's art and culture witnessed notable changes. Burial practices and artistic styles evolved, reflecting influences from foreign rulers and fluctuating political conditions. Yet, the period also produced exquisite objects of jewelry, statues, and funerary goods, revealing that despite fragmentation, Egyptian identity and creativity endured. In the religious sphere, the priesthood of Amun in Thebes grew extraordinarily powerful, acting as kingmakers and ruling over vast temple estates. The religious and political authority of these priests shaped the character of the period, intertwining spiritual and temporal power in unprecedented ways. Despite its reputation as a time of decline, the Third Intermediate Period was also one of adaptation and resilience. Egypt maintained its cultural heritage, engaged in international diplomacy, and navigated a complex web of internal and external pressures. This multifaceted era prepared the stage for Egypt's next phase, the Late Period, beginning around 664 BCE, which witnessed renewed native rule and external challenges, before eventually succumbing to Persian and later Greek dominion. As we move forward in time, the story of ancient Egypt leads us into its final native era, known as the Late Period, roughly spanning from 664 to 332 BCE. This era follows the complexities and fragmentation of the Third Intermediate Period and is marked by a renewed vigor, resilience, and cultural renaissance amidst ongoing political upheavals and external threats. The Late Period began with the revival of Egyptian stability under the 26th dynasty, also known as the Sate dynasty, founded by Psamtik Thebou. Emerging from a background of Assyrian domination, Psamtik Thebou successfully unified Egypt once again. He established his capital at Sais, in the western Nile Delta, and sought to restore Egypt's independence and grandeur. His reign was foundational in reinvigorating traditional Egyptian art, culture, and religion. This Sate Renaissance emphasized a return to the stylistic and cultural principles of Egypt's Old and Middle Kingdoms, embracing classical forms in sculpture, architecture, and literature. Temples were renovated, religious ceremonies regained their former grandeur, and artistic techniques re-emerged. The Sate kings promoted themselves not only as earthly rulers, but as restorers of divine order. However, this era was not without its challenges. Egypt stood at the crossroads of powerful empires, often navigating the threat of Persian invasions, internal dissent, and shifting alliances with nearby civilizations. In 525 BCE, Persia, under Cambyses II, conquered Egypt, initiating the first Persian occupation during the 27th dynasty. Despite foreign rule, Egypt retained many of its cultural and religious traditions. The Persians, recognizing the importance of Egypt's sacred institutions, allowed temples to function, engaging with local elites and priests to maintain stability. There were periods of revolt and brief indigenous resurgence, such as under Amyrtaeus, the only pharaoh of the 28th dynasty, who managed to overthrow Persian rulers temporarily. Yet, Persia regained control in the 31st dynasty, continuing to administer Egypt as a satrapy of their vast empire until their final defeat. During these times, Egypt was a land of coexistence and cultural exchange, absorbing Persian influences while preserving its identity. The twilight of the Late Period came with the conquest of Egypt by Alexander the Great in 332 BCE. Alexander's arrival marked the collapse of Persian rule and the beginning of a new era, the Hellenistic period, where Greek culture mingled with Egyptian traditions, eventually culminating in the Ptolemaic dynasty. Despite their political decline, the Egyptians of the Late Period produced remarkable artistic works, introduced new religious syncretism, and maintained their powerful legacy of spiritual and cultural achievements. Temples at Karnak and Luxor saw continued activity. New styles of statuary appeared, and funerary practices adapted to the changing political climate. The Late Period, while often regarded as the end of ancient Egypt's pharaonic era, was in reality a vibrant period that bridged ancient traditions with new influences, carrying the ancient spirit forward even as the sands of time shifted. Now let us embark on the final chapter of ancient Egyptian history, the Ptolemaic dynasty, which ruled from 305 to 30 BCE. This era marked a fascinating fusion of Hellenistic Greek and ancient Egyptian cultures, a time when Egypt was no longer ruled by native pharaohs, but by Greek Macedonian successors of Alexander the Great. The Ptolemies, founded by Ptolemy I Soter, a general and companion of Alexander, crafted an era that was vibrant, complex, and pivotal for Egypt's legacy. Following Alexander the Great's conquest of Egypt in 332 BCE, the land was initially governed by Alexander's appointed nomarch, Cleomenes of Naucratis, but his empire soon fragmented after his death in 323 BCE. During the ensuing wars of the Diadochi, conflicts among Alexander's generals, Ptolemy carved out Egypt as his domain and declared himself pharaoh in 305 BCE, establishing the Ptolemaic kingdom. Ptolemy the Fine and his descendants adopted many of the symbols, customs, and traditions of Egypt's ancient rulers to legitimize their reigns. They blended Greek and Egyptian religious practices and built on centuries of Egyptian cultural heritage, while introducing Hellenistic art, administration, and governance. Under the Ptolemies, Alexandria, founded by Alexander himself, flourished as the kingdom's capital and the intellectual heart of the Mediterranean world. The city housed the famed Great Library and Museum, centers of learning and scholarship, attracting scholars from across the ancient world. The Ptolemaic kings and queens were known for their elaborate cult of personality. They often ruled as sibling pairs, married to consolidate power, and presented themselves as living gods, bridging the traditions of both Greek and Egyptian divinity. Prominent rulers of this dynasty included Ptolemy II Philadelphus, who greatly expanded the library at Alexandria and fostered a cultural golden age, and Ptolemy III Euergetes, who further extended Egyptian influence overseas. The dynasty is also renowned for monumental architecture, including grand temples built in traditional Egyptian style, such as the Temple of Horus at Edfu and the Temple of Isis at Philae, which blended Greek and Egyptian artistic elements beautifully. The Ptolemaic dynasty preserved many ancient Egyptian traditions, but also transformed Egypt into a cosmopolitan hub of commerce, culture, and political power, playing a crucial role in bridging the classical world with ancient Egypt's enduring heritage. As the sands of time shifted once more, ancient Egypt entered its final great phase under Roman rule, beginning in 30 BCE with the death of Cleopatra VII and the defeat of Mark Antony by Octavian, who would later become the Emperor Augustus. This marked the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty, the last native royal family, and the beginning of Egypt as a province of the vast Roman Empire. Roman Egypt was unlike any other province in the empire. Governed directly by the emperor's appointed prefect rather than the Senate, it was considered the personal possession of the Roman emperor. Its fertile lands, especially along the Nile, made it the empire's breadbasket, supplying large quantities of grain, crucial to feeding the growing Roman population. Alexandria, the vibrant capital of Roman Egypt, retained its status as a major port and cosmopolitan hub. It was a melting pot where Egyptian, Greek, Roman, Jewish, and other cultures coexisted, intertwining languages, religions, and traditions. The city was home to the famous Lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and the Great Library, although the library's fate during this period is shrouded in mystery. Life in Roman Egypt was diverse. Most of the population consisted of Egyptian peasants who spoke Demotic and, later Coptic, a descendant of ancient Egyptian writing. In contrast, the urban elite and administrative class primarily used Greek, the administrative language of the Ptolemaic and Roman authorities. Roman rule introduced new administrative structures and taxation systems, altering land ownership and production. The use of Roman coinage increased, integrating Egypt more tightly into the broader Mediterranean economy. Despite these changes, many Egyptian religious institutions and temples remained active and retained considerable influence, as Roman officials often supported or tolerated local cults to maintain peace. The Christian faith began to spread throughout Egypt during this period, especially in urban centers like Alexandria, which became an early center of Christian theological thought. By the 4th century CE, Christianity had become widespread, gradually replacing traditional Egyptian polytheism. Despite Rome's control, Egypt experienced periods of unrest, including Jewish revolts and local uprisings. The province was also strategically important, hosting Roman legions to deter invasions, or rebellions due to its rich resources and economic significance. The province's history under Rome culminated with the Byzantine era. After the Roman Empire's division, Christianity flourished under Byzantine rule, even as ancient Egyptian religious practices waned. The end of ancient Egyptian civilization is often marked by the Arab conquest of Egypt in 641 CE, which introduced Islam and Arabic culture, profoundly reshaping the region. Nevertheless, the stories, temples, arts, and written legacies of ancient Egypt continue to inspire awe and curiosity across the world, reminding us of a civilization that flourished for thousands of years and whose influence still echoes. As the grandeur of Roman Egypt began to fade, a new wave of history swept through the land, the Arab conquest of Egypt, a pivotal event that reshaped not only Egypt but the entire Mediterranean and Near Eastern worlds. Between 639 and 642 CE, Egypt underwent a rapid and profound transformation under the leadership of the Arab general Amr ibn al-As, who initiated the conquest on his own initiative as part of the expanding Rashidun Caliphate. At the time, Egypt had been under Byzantine control, though the empire's hold was increasingly fragile. By crossing the Sinai Desert with a modest but motivated army, Amr first captured Pelusium, the key fortress guarding Egypt's eastern gateway. The Byzantine forces, composed mostly of local militia rather than professional soldiers, were unable to mount a strong resistance. After a decisive victory at the Battle of Heliopolis in 640 CE and the siege and capture of the fortress Babylon near present-day Cairo, Egypt was effectively divided. The death of Byzantine Emperor Heraclius in 641 weakened Byzantine hopes for reinforcements. The Arabs rapidly advanced to the Nile Delta, and after a prolonged siege, the last major Byzantine stronghold at Alexandria fell in 642 CE, marking the end of Byzantine rule in Egypt. Though the Byzantines briefly retook Alexandria in 644, the Arabs swiftly recaptured it, solidifying control over the entire region. The Arab conquest was one of the swiftest and most complete of the early Muslim expansions. Several factors contributed to this rapid success: the division and exhaustion of Byzantine forces, the strategic acumen of Amr, and the complex local dynamics within Egypt. Some accounts suggest that the local Coptic Christian population, subjected to Byzantine religious oppression, were relatively tolerant or even welcoming of new rulers, hoping for religious leniency. Egypt's rich and fertile Nile Delta, a crucial provider of grain and wealth, became an essential component of the burgeoning Islamic Caliphate. Control over Egypt afforded the Caliphate economic stability, access to vital resources, and a strategic base for further African and Mediterranean expansion. Under Arab rule, Egypt became a vibrant province contributing to the Islamic world's cultural and intellectual flourishing. The Arabic language, Islamic religion, and customs gradually integrated with the ancient Egyptian identity, changing social and political life, but preserving the Nile's enduring significance. This conquest also paved the way for the foundation of Cairo, which would later rise near the ancient city of Babylon as a significant political and cultural capital in the Islamic world. The Arab conquest thus marks a profound turning point, the end of ancient Egypt's millennia-old pharaonic civilizations, and the beginning of a new era that fused the traditions of the past with the dynamic currents of Islamic civilization. Though the dynasties and empires fell, the legacy of Egypt, its pyramids, temples, writings, and indomitable spirit, has continued to inspire throughout history and remains a remarkable testament to human civilization's enduring journey.